The silent guardian awakens the discovery in the void, Captain Vex. Korath pressed his scaled palm against the observation deck's viewport, watching as the Nexus Nebula swirled around his exploration vessel. The massive gas cloud had been hiding secrets for millennia, and today his team from the Zephyrian Empire had found something extraordinary. Floating in the nebula's heart was a derelict ship unlike anything in their databases. The vessel was enormous, easily 3 times the size of their largest battlecruiser. Its hull was a dark metallic grey that seemed to absorb the nebula's colorful gases rather than reflect them. Strange angular designs ran along its surface, and symbols that hurt to look at directly were etched into its armor plating. "Captain," called his science officer Lyra Voss from her console, "the energy readings from that ship are impossible. The whole material is registering as some kind of adaptive metal we've never seen before. And sir, there are still power sources active inside that vessel." Vex felt his secondary heart skip a beat. Active power sources in a derelict that appeared to be thousands of years old meant one thing: someone or something might still be alive inside. His empire had encountered many dead civilizations during their expansion across the galaxy, but they had never found survivors from the ancient times. "Prepare a boarding party," Vex ordered, his voice carrying the authority that had made him one of the youngest captains in the Zephyrian fleet. "I want full environmental suits and heavy scanning equipment. Whatever built that ship was far more advanced than anything we've seen." The boarding shuttle approached the massive vessel slowly, its crew of 6 specialists ready for anything. Chief Engineer Drakthorn ran continuous scans, while Security Officer Calaviaron kept her plasma rifle charged and ready. The ship grew larger as they approached, revealing details that made their translator systems work overtime. Captain Thorne reported, "I'm detecting what appears to be writing on the hull. The translator is having trouble with it, but it keeps showing partial matches to something called human language patterns." Vex felt a chill run through his body. Humans were legends, stories told to young Zephyrians about a mythical species that had supposedly lived in this galaxy long ago. Most scholars believed humans were just stories invented by primitive cultures, trying to explain ancient ruins. But if this ship truly belonged to humans, then the legends were real. Entering the ancient tomb, the boarding party found an airlock that responded to their presence with lights that hadn't glowed for millennia. As they stepped inside the ancient vessel, emergency lighting flickered to life along the corridors, revealing architecture that was both beautiful and alien. The passages were designed for bipedal creatures slightly smaller than Zephyrians, with smooth walls that seemed to flow like frozen water. "Atmosphere is breathable," reported Calaviaron, checking her scanner. "Oxygen-nitrogen mix, similar to what we use on colony worlds. Temperature is rising slowly, as if the ship is waking up." They moved deeper into the vessel, their footsteps echoing strangely in the metal corridors. The ship was vast, with multiple levels and sections that suggested it was designed for long-term voyages. As they explored, they found chambers filled with technology that their scanners couldn't identify. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Eurostern, the team's archaeologist. "The technology here is centuries ahead of anything in our databases. Look at these control panels. They're not just buttons and switches. They appear to respond to biological signatures and possibly even thoughts." Vex touched one of the strange control panels, and suddenly the corridor filled with a soft humming sound. Lights began activating throughout the ship, and they could hear the distant sound of machinery coming online after an unimaginable period of dormancy. "Captain," Thorn called from deeper in the corridor. You need to see this. They followed the engineer to a massive chamber filled with transparent pods arranged in perfect rows. Inside each pod was a figure suspended in some kind of stasis field. The beings were humanoid, with smooth skin, bilateral symmetry, and faces that seemed almost familiar despite being from an alien species. Are they alive? Vex asked, staring at the hundreds of pods that stretched across the enormous chamber. According to these readings, yes, Thorn confirmed. Whatever stasis technology they're using is far beyond anything we understand. These beings have been in suspended animation for thousands of years, but their life signs are stable. Dr. Stern studied the symbols near one of the pods, her translator finally making progress with the ancient language. Captain, I think I've got a translation. This symbol means guardian, and this one means defender. And this longer inscription talks about Earth's children and the long journey home. The awakening begins as they documented the stasis chamber. The ship continued to come alive around them. Systems that had been dormant for millennia began running diagnostics, and the air circulation started moving with increasing efficiency. The ancient vessel was not just a tomb preserving the dead. It was a sleeping giant preparing to wake up. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not harsh warning klaxons, but musical tones that seemed designed to gently alert the sleeping crew. One by one, the stasis pods began glowing brighter, and the occupants inside started showing increased brain activity on the boarding party's medical scanners. We need to leave, Vex decided. We're triggering some kind of automated revival sequence, and we don't know how these beings will react to finding us aboard their ship. But as they tried to retreat toward their shuttle, the ship's corridors began changing. Passages that had been open now showed sealed blast doors, while new pathways opened that led deeper into the vessel. The ship was guiding them somewhere, and they had no choice but to follow. They found themselves in what appeared to be the ship's bridge, a massive command center with viewports that looked out into the nebula. Ancient chairs were arranged around control stations that were beginning to activate, showing star charts and navigation data that covered thousands of light years. Look at this, Dr. Stern breathed, studying one of the active displays. These star charts show our entire region of space, but the planetary configurations are different. This data is ancient, showing what our galaxy looked like thousands of years ago. Vex studied the charts with growing unease. Many of the star systems shown were now part of the Zephyrian Empire. Worlds they had colonized and built cities on were marked with symbols that their translator identified as human settlements. The implications were staggering. Captain Carla V. Aaron called from across the bridge, "Something's happening to that central stasis pod." In the center of the bridge was a single cryogenic pod, larger and more elaborate than the others they had seen. The being inside was clearly the ship's commander, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform with insignia that marked high rank. As they watched, the stasis field began to fade, and the occupant's eyes fluttered open. The human woman sat up slowly, her movements careful and deliberate as she assessed her surroundings. When her gaze fell upon the Zephyrin boarding party, her expression shifted from confusion to alert wariness. She spoke in a language that their translators struggled with before switching to something they could understand. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy," she said, her voice carrying authority despite her obvious disorientation. "You are aboard the UES Defiance, and you are not welcome here without permission." The weight of truth. Chen moved with the fluid grace of someone trained for zero-gravity combat, despite having been in stasis for millennia. She activated control panels with practiced ease, and the ship responded to her commands as if no time had passed at all. Displays showed the current state of the galaxy, and Sarah's expression grew grim as she processed the information. 5,000 years, she said quietly. We've been asleep for 5,000 years, and you've built an empire on our worlds. Vex felt the weight of her words. The Zephyrian Empire had indeed expanded across hundreds of star systems over the centuries. But they had always believed they were the first intelligent species to claim those worlds. Archaeological evidence suggested previous civilizations, but they had assumed those cultures were primitive and long extinct. Your species, Sarah continued, studying the data streaming across her screens. You call yourselves Zephyrians. You've colonized 17 systems that were once human colonies. Kepler 442, Proxima Centauri Wolf 359. All of these worlds had human settlements before your people arrived. The boarding party exchanged uncertain glances. Their empire had been built on worlds they thought were empty. But if this human commander was telling the truth, they were living on the graves of an entire civilization. What happened to the humans? Dr. Stern asked, her scientific curiosity. Overcoming her fear, Sarah's expression hardened. We were dying. A plague swept through human space, something our medical science couldn't cure. The colonies fell one by one, and Earth itself became uninhabitable. The Defiance was our ark, carrying the last survivors and all of human knowledge into deep space. She activated another display showing the ship's interior. We carry 10,000 humans in stasis, along with genetic samples, cultural archives, and the accumulated knowledge of our species. We were supposed to wake up when conditions were right to rebuild our civilization. But you didn't wake up for 5,000 years, Calaviaran observed. The ship's AI was programmed to wait until the plague had died out and the galaxy was safe for human life again, Sarah explained. Your arrival here, your scan of our systems, triggered the revival protocols. The AI determined that the time had come to wake the Guardians. Throughout the ship, more stasis pods were activating. Humans who had been sleeping since before the rise of the Zephyrian Empire were opening their eyes to find their galaxy transformed. The last survivors of humanity were awakening to discover that another species had inherited the worlds they once called home. As Commander Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's greatest starship, surrounded by aliens who lived on human worlds, both species faced a future that neither had expected. The age of human isolation was over. But what would come next would test both civilizations in ways they could never imagine. Asterisk, when legends come. Alive the Guardians, Burden Commander, Sarah. Chen stood before the main tactical display as more systems came online throughout the UES Defiance. The ancient warship had been humanity's pride, equipped with technology that pushed the boundaries of what was possible 5,000 years ago. Now, as she watched the ship's AI catalog the current state of the galaxy, she realized that their advanced human technology might still be superior to anything these Zephyrians possessed. Aria, she called, addressing the ship's artificial intelligence. Status report on all human personnel and ship systems. A warm, feminine voice responded from speakers throughout the bridge. Welcome back, Commander Chen. Revival sequence is progressing nominally. Currently, 300 Guardians have been awakened and are reporting to their stations. All critical systems are operational, and weapons arrays are charging to full capacity. The Zephyrian boarding party watched in fascination and growing concern as the ancient ship transformed around them. Blast shutters opened to reveal weapon ports that glowed with energy, and the hull began shifting and reconfiguring itself into what was clearly a combat configuration. Captain Vex Korath stepped forward carefully, his hands held open in a gesture of peace. Commander Chen, my people had no knowledge that these worlds were once inhabited by humans. We believed we were the first to settle them. Sarah studied the alien captain through eyes that had seen the fall of human civilization. Ignorance doesn't change the fact that you built your cities on top of ours, Captain. Every world you've colonized has human graves beneath your foundations. Dr. Eurostern consulted her portable scanner, which was now able to access the ship's historical databases. Commander, our records show that Zephyrian expansion began approximately 3,000 years ago. If your people were already gone by then, perhaps this is simply a case of natural succession. Natural succession, Sarah's voice carried a dangerous edge. Arya, show them what natural succession looks like. The bridge's main viewer activated, displaying a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Human colonies appeared as blue dots, while Zephyrian settlements showed as red markers. The overlay was shocking. Nearly every Zephyrian world directly corresponded to a former human colony. Your ancestors didn't find empty worlds, Sarah explained. They found worlds where the infrastructure was already built, where the terraforming was already complete, where cities had already been constructed. They simply moved into homes that humans had died building. The weight of history throughout. The ship, more humans were awakening from their long sleep. These were not ordinary colonists, but the elite of human civilization, scientists, engineers, soldiers, and leaders who had been chosen to preserve their species' legacy. As they emerged from stasis and learned of their situation, their reactions ranged from grief to anger to determination. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, the ship's tactical officer, arrived on the bridge, still wearing his stasis recovery suit. He was a veteran of humanity's last wars, a man who had watched their civilization crumble and had volunteered for this mission knowing he might never see Earth again. Commander, he reported, all weapon systems are online and targeting solutions are locked. We have 17 Zephyrian ships in this system, including their exploration vessel. Orders. Sarah held up a hand, her mind racing through possibilities. The easy path would be vengeance. The Defiance was more than capable of destroying every Zephyrian ship in the system and beginning a campaign to reclaim human worlds. But that would make them no better than conquerors themselves. Stand down, Marcus, she ordered. We're not starting a war without understanding the full situation. Captain Vex felt relief wash through him, though he recognized that the human commander could change her mind at any moment. Commander Chen, perhaps we could arrange a meeting between your leaders and representatives of the Zephyrian Empire. This situation affects both our peoples. It affects the entire galaxy, Sarah corrected. Arya, how many human ships are still out there? The AI processed the question for several seconds before responding. Long-range sensors detect 43 human vessels scattered throughout the galaxy. All are showing signs of revival activity. It appears that our awakening has triggered a chain reaction among all surviving human ships. The implications hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. Humanity wasn't returning as a handful of survivors on a single ship. They were awakening across the galaxy, and each vessel carried thousands of humans who had been sleeping while another species inherited their worlds. The moral dilemma. Stern approached one of the bridge consoles, her scientific mind fascinated by the human technology. Commander Chen, May I ask what your people's intentions are? Do you plan to reclaim your former colonies? Sarah considered the question carefully. The weight of humanity's survival rested on her shoulders, but so did the moral responsibility of her decisions. Dr. Stern, what would your people do if they discovered that every world in their empire had once belonged to another species? I honestly don't know, the Zephyrian archaeologist admitted. Our entire civilization is built on those worlds. Billions of Zephyrians call them home. We have families, children, entire cultures that have grown up on what you call human worlds. And that's the problem neither of us can easily solve, Sarah replied. You have a right to the homes you've built over thousands of years. But my people have a right to the worlds where our ancestors lived and died. Commander Webb studied the tactical displays showing Zephyrian fleet positions throughout human space. Commander, we could take back our worlds. Our technology is still superior, and we have the element of surprise. The Zephyrians don't even know we exist yet. And what happens to the billions of Zephyrians living on those worlds, Marcus? Sarah asked. Do we become the conquerors our ancestors never wanted to be? Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez arrived on the bridge, having awakened from stasis to find her ship functioning perfectly after millennia of dormancy. Commander, I've been reviewing our mission parameters. The Defiance was sent to preserve human civilization, not to restart human expansion through warfare. The decision Captain Vex watched the debate among the humans with growing respect for their restraint. His own people might have simply attacked first and negotiated later, but these ancient humans were grappling with moral complexities that showed remarkable wisdom. Commander Chen, he said formally, what if we could find a solution that honored both our people's rights? Sarah turned to study the alien captain. What did you have in mind? Joint colonization, Vex proposed. There are unclaimed worlds throughout the galaxy. What if human and Zephyrian populations could work together to build new colonies? Your people bring advanced technology and historical knowledge, while we bring established infrastructure and resources. Dr. Stern's eyes widened at the proposal. It could work. Many of our outer territories are still underdeveloped. Human expertise could help us build better worlds while we provide homes for your people. Lieutenant Commander Webb shook his head. With respect, that still leaves the question of our original colonies. Those worlds have significance beyond just strategic value. They're where human civilization began its expansion to the stars. Sarah walked to the main viewport, looking out at the nebula that had hidden the Defiance for so long. Arya, what's the status of our original colonies? Are there any signs of human archaeological sites or cultural preservation? Scanning available data, the AI replied. Results show that several Zephyrian worlds maintain what they call ancient ruins as historical preserves. These sites contain human artifacts, architecture, and burial grounds that have been protected from development. They preserved our heritage sites? Sarah asked, surprised. Captain Vex nodded. Zephyrian culture places great value on respecting the civilizations that came before us. We've always maintained the ancient ruins as sacred sites, even though we didn't understand their origin. The path forward, the revelation changed the dynamics on the bridge significantly. The Zephyrians hadn't simply bulldozed human civilization to build their own. They had preserved what they found, treating human ruins with the respect given to sacred places. Commander, Dr. Martinez said quietly, perhaps this is exactly what our mission was meant to achieve. Not the restoration of human dominance, but the preservation of human heritage alongside new civilizations. Sarah made her decision. Aria, open communications with all awakening human vessels. Priority command authorization. Channel open. Commander, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the EU's Defiance to all human vessels. We have made contact with the Zephyrian Empire, the species that has inherited our former colonies. Initial assessment suggests potential for peaceful coexistence. All vessels are ordered to maintain defensive postures only and await further instructions. She turned to Captain Vex. Captain, I'm prepared to open formal negotiations between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. But I need assurance that your government will honor any agreements we reach. You have it, Vex replied without hesitation. This discovery will change everything for both our species. The galaxy is large enough for two civilizations, especially when they both value knowledge and respect for the past. As the ancient human warship and the modern Zephyrian vessel established formal communications, both species stood at the threshold of a new age. Humanity had returned from the darkness of near extinction, while the Zephyrians faced the reality that they were not alone in the galaxy. The age of human isolation was ending, but rather than returning as conquerors, they were awakening as potential partners in building a future that neither species could achieve alone. The legends had come alive, but they brought wisdom rather than war, hope rather than vengeance. In the depths of space, surrounded by the swirling gases of the Nexus Nebula, two civilizations began the delicate process of learning to share a galaxy that both could call home. Asterisk.